Da, 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 da. We're live.
Hey,
There we go. All right, take a
hey,
minute.
hey! I think that was like your first actual intro.
There's my
There
live. I've been trying something different every single time.
you go. Nice one.
To everyone who's been waiting, thank you for being patient. I was coming off something else I was taking care of, and so cryptographics and I were making sure we were all prepared before we launched this. So thank you all for being patient.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, this is gonna be cool. So, what are you thinking? What you been watching? What have you been seeing? Where do you want to begin, my man?
So honestly, I don't know if you caught this. Jerome Powell testified in front of the Senate banking, and he talked about banks are now are free to do what they want with. Okay, I can't mince words. I'm looking for it as as I'm talking about it. But he talked about how I'm going to also see if I can find it maybe a little quicker on my phone. But he essentially said, banks are free to interact with crypto as they see fit. Yeah, banks are free when you're testifying in front of the thing from the Senate committee. Banks are free to conduct crypto activities.
Damn. I'm gonna throw that into Grok, and I'm gonna get an interesting answer for us. But
Yes, please.
when you hear that, where do you go with what that means for us in DeFi, larger crypto, and beyond?
I think what's already been going on with real RWAs, real world assets. I think when I hear, you are free to conduct crypto activities, is crypto activities that are permissible and already occurring and already under the control and guise of what's going on. That's my knee-jerk reaction, in all honesty. Um, and then you can buy Bitcoin. I think anything for the larger perspective, once you get into alt and everything, that's the gray area that I think is where it becomes risk and the casino and all the things.
Well,
But as
even for
long,
ETH and BTC specifically, let's even talk ETH because ETH's the big
sure,
relevant one.
yeah. I'm bringing up a website
Perfect.
because I think this will kind of surmise a little bit of what I'm thinking. All right, let's get this presentation thing. Oh, I brought it up on the wrong. Da, da, da. Here we go. All right. Oh, my Atlanta. First, you'd think this was my first time. Okay. I'm trying to bring it. I got a couple windows and I'm trying to make sure they're all succinct. Okay. Present. So what it tells me, so rwa.xyz, real world asset. This is a website where it provides just a market overview of real world assets, investors, what is being tokenized on what chains, what are
Cool.
most being brought in terms of treasuries, real estate, everything. And to me, when I hear something like that, at least how I'm thinking about it in my head is, yes, banks, feel free to tokenize U.S. treasuries. And as we can see, U.S. Treasury debt is at almost 7.4 billion.
Hey, real quick, your screen's not quite shared.
It's not. All right, let's try that again. There we go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Now we're in.
There we go. First time. So here it is. Every tokenized real world asset all in one place.
RWA.xyz. Cool.
Yeah. So what I find highly valuable what I think about is, yes, banks, we, the Fed, are okay with banks tokenize, despite what JP More Jamie Dimon says. The guy's hilarious. He criticizes crypto, and then his own bank will go and buy millions or billions of worth or tokenize whatever it may be.
That's the game. It's terrible. Sell it all, and sell it all to me.
He's like trying to create the dip. He's like, let me
Yep.
criticize it, so I create an artificial dip, and then I bought, and it's up 20%, and we're happy as a company.
Yep.
But this is what it means to me, is tokenizing real world assets, tokenize what's already been in existence of our economic system. You've got 1.5 billion of commodities, private credit. I mean, that's enough said, but from at least a Fed perspective, that's what it means. That's what I hear when I think of it. How about you?
I like the way you took this, because my mind doesn't go to RWA, and it's really cool to see this. I want to take some time post stream and really dive into the RWA world, because I haven't really spent a lot of time. My mind goes to just retail,
Sure.
and how it will affect, how that link between retail and crypto will occur. Because
okay,
now what this is implying to me is that banks may be the new FTX, maybe the new Coinbase, maybe the new middleman,
yes,
right? Where they can offer crypto exposure, right? With the security of an insurance and whatever else would come with it that a bank can offer, right? So if banks can now be that middleman, Coinbase now has direct competition. Binance now has direct competition. But I think you now would get a 2-tiered, possibly 3-tiered system. You get the initial easy exposure for people that are never going to get a DeFi wallet. They're never going to get cold storage. They're never going to do that. But they want exposure to this new age. And then you're going to have the layer 2 potentially, where you have people that are maybe going to utilize, which I'll say the effects of that I can see happening potentially are, I mean, once the headlines start going, as you pointed out, the headlines are so important, right? And I made a post yesterday because it was starting to click over the last few weeks of, it's all a big game. And the game is the institutions clearly at this point in the game want to buy. And then when they are done buying, they'll go to the same media companies that they own major shares in, and they'll send them the headlines they want them to start posting.
Yep.
And they will make retail extremely excited. And that will start to translate to the price. So the reason I'm saying this, though, or go ahead if you want to interject.
No, I do want to jump in. So I've watched for the first time The Big Short over the past 2 days. Life when you have kids, you don't get to sit down and watch a full movie from start to finish. I finally watched The Big Short, the housing market crisis and some of the decisions that were made. And you made a very interesting point about, so is this the post you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Wanted to make sure I brought up the right post. Yes. It was, and here's how I'm thinking about it in my head is, so yes, much of what has gone on in this story, maybe the nitty gritty, but there's some like key points within The Big Short, and I have to do a deep dive, really get into like what happened, because during that time, thankfully, I was unaffected, given where I was still living with my parents, and so my dad's job was unaffected by it, thankfully. But one of what I think about from that movie that at least they was acknowledged as true was the Standard & Poor rating agencies. You had these bonds, and they would just remarket them, bind them together, say, oh, and then rebrand it as something, and then just make it kind of sexy. And then you'd have Standard & Poor rating agency going, oh, it's got it's great. You got a 92%, or they give ratings like AAA, AA, but like they would give these like, oh, it's great. It's got a 93% score. It's wonderful. But when in reality, it's worth absolute dog crap. And so what I was thinking about in there is how the game being played is very much like, all right, nothing's being said right now, but to your point of the media isn't marketing it because BlackRock, ARK, Fidelity, Franklin, Templeton, I think that's the name, and all these others are buying and eating it up. And when at the right moment, it's all happening here. And then at the right moment, it's all right, now we're ready to sell. And we need to sell, we need to make it look sexy. And so anyway, that's where my mind was going. And
Well, that's exactly it. You nailed it. It's all like it is propaganda, you know, at this level. It's financial propaganda and withholding information and then sending the message out when they want, which I mean that's really all the media companies really do for the most part these days, is really just tell narratives, you know, for the most part. So I mean that's this whole other thing that I don't really want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole.
But yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes to the banking side of it, that could be I mean, a lot of what I'm going to say is speculative in terms of like, I don't really know. I'm just trying to like go there with my thoughts and all that stuff. Right. So I'm just playing around with where my mind goes.
Yeah. We're thinking about
so
it.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that comes up is, you know, retail has typically had hurdles, right? You got to get a Coinbase account. You got to get a Binance account. You got to go through a broker. You got to do this. What if now FOMO is manufactured to a level that has already happened or greater?
Sure.
Through the media. And it's now easier than ever for someone to get into crypto. There is no hurdles. What might that do to the price?
Yep.
What might that do to adoption? What might, you know, there's a lot of interesting implications that come from simplicity for retail, because we all know how like people don't like to have to do more than they want, right? People want like one click, talk to one person.
Yeah.
You know?
Or if you want to, there's two ways, or like it makes me think about, okay, getting retail to Pulse Chain. All right. I feel like think about, there's like two avenues. Open a old Glory account, like then put money in there on, and then the steps there. Or you can buy on Coinbase, take that ETH, put it into your MetaMask wallet, then take that, bridge it over, and for retail, there's so many steps over. But for those that are like deep in DeFi, it's like, yeah, that just, when you don't want to be blacklisted, that's just, it's all part of it. Anyway, it's where my head went. I was like, yeah, fair.
It's true. And Pulse Chain's definitely got some major hurdles in that sense to retail adoption, which doesn't mean it's not going to be conquered at some point, but it's, you know, and that's true for all of DeFi really, because if you think about it, like, you know, we could even say that similar for TitanX, though TitanX has, I think, less steps, but it's still similar in the respect of like, you need to get ETH, then you need to know of Uniswap, and then you need to know what TitanX is, or if you want to get DragonX, let's say, you know, the TitanX ecosystem tokens, then it's kind of like you kind of get these weird steps too that you're like, how do I do all this? And I got to find the contract addresses. How do I know which one's the right one? It's like, oh my God, you know, there's steps to this. So that there's a couple things there. It's like, okay, well, that leaves potential room. Well, do I want to say room? Maybe I'll pause there and think about it, because I got this Grok message that came up, and I'll toss it back to you.
Sure.
To rip on for a moment.
No, you're good. It's a good point. And of course, all viewers, do your own research, have your own convictions. This is educational. We're just talking just processing out, because how often, yes, X is X. The internet is the internet. But being able to sit down, actually talk to someone and go, all right, what are we thinking? How are we viewing this? That's what it's all about. Real quick. Love you, Utah. Much love, man. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, good to see you on here, man. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I hope you are. It's a fair point, because like thinking about what's an easy onboard, and so banks being able to offer, hey, do you want exposure with your account to crypto without having to go, and then the bank or the credit union, whichever you use, they'll just maybe open up a Coinbase account or Binance or whatever, and they'll just say, hey, if you want exposure, you can buy Bitcoin through us. And then there's an easy onboard. You buy, it shows up in your list of accounts when you log in, and you don't have to think about, how do I manage cold wallet, hot wallet? What's the steps I got to do? It makes me think of like with Chase or Bank of America. I know you can log into your account, and if you do your own if you do your own stock trading, you have all your accounts listed, and then I think you can have all the stocks you own and what the price at the moment. So you just do that as well. If you're not buying into the ETFs.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that's a fair point. It's not one where my head automatically goes, but it's definitely one where it makes it easier for retail, because they don't have to go far. They don't have to go through the hoops. They just, but then you get people in retail they'll go, okay, this is my first foray. Oh, interesting. Okay, what else can I do? What else can I do? How much further can I go? And that's where my head goes, is into maybe that is starting to draw them into more DeFi. So you can be like, yes, you got your Bitcoin or ETH, but you don't understand it, but at least you're giving it a shot. And then okay, now you got a little bit of attention of crypto, and then it's just like a slow draw in. Maybe that's where
possible. Well, and also to extend on that too, let's look at the second layer that's kind of sitting there between the Genius Act and now this comment. We have a link now where possibly banks could offer stablecoin services.
Ooh, bring that up here. I don't know if you found some.
I don't have what I'm doing. I'm just riffing off of what I know about the Genius Act, and this could be something interesting though, because if banks now are able to do DeFi and crypto stuff, well, they could run their own stablecoins, and that opens up a whole world of liquidity injecting into the crypto world.
Get out of here. Okay, so the Bank of Korea, but nonetheless, stablecoin issuance should begin with banks. Oh, that was today. Oh, that's
okay, timing.
Oh, Bank of Korea officials want stablecoin issuance to start with regulated banks to minimize risks before expanding to other sectors. So, this, to me, I don't know if justifies, but this further proves the point. I swear I saw, and here's where I'm also another connection. I swear I read somewhere, I caught it, and I'm frantically searching to see if I can find it. And if I can't, I can't. And so then I'm misremembering. And so, illusion of having good memory. But what is is the idea that businesses should be able to issue, I'll look this up, Tesla issue its own crypto. This is where I thought I read or saw something about, no, I don't, okay. I'm misremembering. Nonetheless, so I'll remove that point. But coming back to the idea of within DeFi, you think, what's the this to me, it heightens the or emphasizes the notoriety of a business, a project, or anything. So Chase, Bank of Korea, any banks around the world issue their own stable coin. Cool. What is the value that you would bring to the table? Like, why would I want to use your stable coin over, why would I want to use Bank of Korea's stable coin over Chase's? Now we're getting down to reputation. It's just putting, in my mind, more on the forefront of it comes down to reputation, what the founder, what's actually happening. That is, I mean, we see it on social media. Something happens and immediately someone will come out, whether they should or not, they come out with a public apology like, yes, I'm sorry this happened, I'm learning my lesson, yada yada yada, or yep, or no, I publicly deny, that's not true. And then it's all reputation. They're all trying to protect their reputation. So now if banks can issue their own stable coin, I mean, they got to have some real, it's got to be well, I can't say it's got to be backed by something, because as we've learned in the past couple years, the US dollar is, not only is it backed by nothing, but you don't have to have, I think, oh crap, I just had a brain fart. But no, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just kind of talking out loud, but this kind of further emphasizes the reputation and what goes on that either will persuade someone to engage and transact with, or completely be dismissive and go, yeah, heck no, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. And then it kind of, and then as I'm talking this out, I'm kind of further seeing the Richard Hart side, where he's like, look, let's just full DeFi. You're not going to have to deal with banks here. And then eventually, hopefully, over time, he's like, look, it's going to be easier and easier to be on Pulse Chain. You won't have to worry about X, Y, or Z. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud. I'm going to turn it back over to you. You were conversating with one of the AIs, so
yeah, it was,
I'm going to punt it back to you, man.
All right. Well, let me say a couple things on the note of the stablecoin front, because you were going to some interesting directions, and it actually gave me a few thoughts of like, okay, well, because you're right. If all banks are competing with native stablecoins, that could be weird from a liquidity standpoint, and it might make more sense to have 1, 2, 3, 4 unified stablecoins within the space, where let's say the Korean, there's like a Korean or there's a Canadian or there's an American main like stable coin, right? Issued by the bank, let's say, or issued by banks in general. Now, these banks in general that would have access to an entity like a treasury and a mint function, where they would all have individual accounts, which would all access this main entity and issue, let's say, the USD stablecoin that they want, or the Korean stablecoin that they want. Instead of having competitive, right? It's just minting from the same place, so that way there is enough liquidity, and it's not like you have all these random liquidity pairs on the blockchain. Right. That would be weird, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I have no idea if this is actually what they're thinking, but I could see something like this being utilized,
Yep. Consolidation of power, and or consolidation being able to, so it's like on Coinbase, if you just hold USDC, you get a certain APY. It's like 3 or 4% APY for holding USDC. It's like, okay, if you hold, we'll say Bank of Korea, BK state, like SBK, I don't know, whatever. If this actually goes anywhere, a stable bout of Bank of Korea. So is there all the questions to your point on liquidity, what I'm starting to think of is like, okay, so you've issued this stable coin. How do I know you're not going to go under next month or a year from now? How do I know that when I exit or when I move over, it's not like, so like Sonic just ended their first season and they're going to a second season. You can accrue points, but in order to get your deposit back, it takes 5 days. It took five, like to unstake if you staked. Is there with stable coins? If I switch from Bank of Korea SBK to JPMC, JP Morgan Chase stable coin, is that going to happen instantly, or is there going to be like, all right, well, we have to take your funds. It's going to be 5 days release before the swap happens. I don't know. Anyway, that's where my head was. You mentioned that, and that's where my head went.
It's possible too, though. That's a good point. There may still be hurdles. We all know how banks are. They're like, oh, I'll take your money in 5 seconds, then I'll give it back to you in 5 business days.
And
so it's probably going to happen to some degree. And I mean, I could see that being because there's specific protocols and security measures in place, blah, blah, blah. But obviously 5 business days is always extreme. Should always be able to be done within like an hour. I feel.
Oh yeah.
It's so simple. So where I want to go with this though is
please.
All of this is more liquidity on chain. More liquidity on chain means more liquidity that can enter into, and buy ETH, alts, whatever else is out there. And, the use case for those there's more stable coins, right? There may need to be more use case, or there might need to be, those stable coins might want to find use case. And so if there isn't more use case and there's only a finite quality number of use cases,
right,
then that liquidity is going to flow where it's treated best. So there's a good chance. I mean, this is obviously a little bit more in the future when it comes to the banking stuff. I don't know.
Oh, of course.
I don't. Do you feel like this is going to be really implemented and impactful for this bull? I'm hesitant to say certainly. I feel like this is a few years down the road when this is really going to take effect.
I'm with you. I think this is just kind of like, hey, I'm trying to do an at best job. Like we're trying to do an at best job of like, okay, what are things that have popped up that kind of like, of all the noise that is going on, that is just spewed every single second of every single day, what is kind of like floating a little or flying above the surface as opposed to the sea of just noise.
Yep. Yeah, well, exactly.
Anyway,
so
what would you were mentioning?
Oh, I was going to say is, I mean, this in a nutshell, because I mean, I did say originally there's 3 layers to this. I don't know. Honestly, all of it's theoretical anyways. So what I'll say is this is cool because I feel like this is an opportunity because we have a few overlapping processes that are occurring simultaneously right now. You have the DeFi space, or just the crypto space, is becoming more regulated, but it's also becoming more accessible simultaneously. Yes. And you also, so what does accessibility point to? Well, why accessibility is important in the way that accessibility is becoming accessible. It's happening. It's a really weird thing to say. And the way that accessibility is happening is it will give people more privacy and security in terms of how they feel about where their funds are, who's control. Like people really care about that. Now, simultaneously, you have this less accessible aspect, which is, let's say, ETH and L1s and DeFi in general.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, and I think we talked about this last time too, is you have ETH moving towards privacy and anonymity and sovereignty. Yep. And so you have a very interesting split here, or I guess harmonization of privacy. that seems to be happening in the space, which, I mean, why I think that's going to be really cool is because I think you could see ETH become more like an infrastructure layer because
Definitely.
of that, because you're not having this like anyone can track anyone kind of thing, and all moves can be traced.
Hmm.
I can really see it being used as more of an everyday piece of technology versus this blockchain thing that we kind of have now. It's not so open and transparent. It is still open, verifiable, and transparent, but not to the degree where someone can be tracked and harmed or
For sure.
extracted from. And I think this is a really cool feature that is going to boost the value overall of ETH. And because we're tied to ETH, I mean, you're going to want to be in something like TitanX, or Taurus or whatever, DragonX, or
100%. Yeah, whatever it may
things that are
be.
going to really benefit from ETH.
You make a very good point. And the way I've viewed ETH is, for those who have ever been to New York City, I view ETH as everything that happens under the ground, or any city. It's all the plumbing, all the wiring, everything that's happening surface down. And then when you have and then from when you have a city and you're like, oh, I can only think of New York City. I've never been to LA. But in New York City, you've got the five boroughs, but within every five borough, you got the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, Lower East Side. You got Chelsea, you've got FiDi, you've got all these little pockets, and they all each have its unique value. And so I kind of see the rest of the DeFi space at the moment, at least currently, how I see it all working out is you've got kind of like New York City, and then you've got each little kind of like mini area of New York City as like, oh, do you want some authentic Chinese? Go to Chinatown, and that could be, I don't know, it's the only thing I'm running with, but it's kind of like TitanX is like, oh, I know there's a certain ethos that comes from parts of Chinatown that I really want and I really crave. Let me go to that. Or if I'm more, you know what, I like a big show. I like like things being flamboyant and big and bright. All right, go to Times Square. Have at it. You'll have Dogecoin there, no problem. Everyone's heard it, at least at this point.
Yep.
Anyway, that's where that's where I've thought about it, and honestly, where, as you were talking, kind of my mind went.
That's a good way of looking at that. I think there's definitely some truth to that. And I think it's going to be really interesting. If we assume that ETH has this potential to be this lower layer infrastructure that you're referring to, where people can go when they crave this, crave that, what's going to happen to a system? Because ETH is going to go up in value. This is my opinion. I think ETH is going to go up tremendously in value over the next number of years. This year, next year, I think is going to be massive for ETH. But I think something to consider is when you have an ecosystem that leverages a deflate. I'm going to say this in a weird way, but I think it's important to be said to understand it in this way. But when you leverage a deflationary proxy for the value of ETH, you actually have a major advantage for building an ecosystem versus other types of systems you can build. Sure. Now, the reason I say proxy is because it's a deflationary proxy, right? Meaning it's like you want access to ETH, you need to go through TitanX. And the value of TitanX, obviously, we all know is the leverage and all that stuff's easy. We get that. But the point I'm making here is that, and this is why Taurus is built the way it is. This is why DragonX is built the way it is. Like everyone, this is why build on TitanX exists, right? Is because we all understand that to some degree that ETH is going to go up in value. And if you have something like TitanX that is going to mature. And what maturity means is extremely difficult to get.
Yeah.
Extremely, it has the potential to, as there's demand for TitanX or other protocols built on it, that pushes the value of the protocols and simultaneously TitanX up to a degree that is not possible if you're just leveraging ETH. So TitanX
100%.
kind of gives that. I don't even know how to describe it because it's like if you were, like I was saying, if you were to just build DragonX on ETH, it would never perform. Like, you would have none of the
We've seen
protocols
it
that we have.
before, like the buy and hold minus
Exactly.
the buy and burn. Those show up left, right, and center all over the place.
Exactly. And creating a proxy token or the gas token, right? It's basically like TitanX is like an L2, more or less, right? But instead of a bridge and instead of all these complicated or not complicated, but all these extra steps, to get to another chain, to have different throughput, to have all this crazy infrastructure needs to be built. It's literally just the token. The token gains you access to the L2.
Yeah.
And so, but because of that, the interesting thing is using the L2 typically deflates the availability of supply, which puts pressure on the token price. And so there's kind of this interesting relationship where instead of people going to an L2, and it just being like, increased network activity, it directly, disproportionately affects the value and scarcity of the L2 versus, in TitanX being the L2 analogy, right?
Yeah,
So
I see what you're saying. Instead of like, all right, at least how I've heard you explain it, and let me make sure. Instead of like, all right, I'm on ETH. Let me go with it. Let me go into an ecosystem that is already paired with ETH, where I don't have to do something like a bridge over to a base or any others, where it's like, okay, I've got my ETH. Oh, now I have to go bridge my ETH over onto a chain, an L2 ETH chain. Okay, now I have to do that. Why can't I just stay within ETH and have an ecosystem within that?
exactly.
That's how I understood what you're saying.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And to add just a little bit more to that too, it's like you can think about the token is the bridge.
Yep.
Right. And when someone uses the bridge, typically, like, you get your tokens on the network, and then you got to buy a little bit of, whether it's Matic or one of the other L2s.
100%.
It's not really affecting price so much, right? Because you're buying a little bit for gas, but then you're bringing your ETH, which is the main value that you want to bring in to Arbitrum or Polygon or all these different. So you're not actually injecting the value into the core infrastructure, right? What you're doing is they're kind of disconnected. But what TitanX actually does, and this is really interesting, is it kind of harmonizes that whole process where, it harmonizes the bridging and the value injection into the system, so that way they're all kind of one. So when someone wants to bring value into, let's say, DragonX, right?
Yep.
They can't just bring their ETH into the system and buy DragonX and not inject the value directly into TitanX. They have to inject value into TitanX to get that token, put it into DragonX, and this in turn either locks up, burns, or does something, pushes up the value to TitanX, right? Which affects all the other ecosystems. And as time goes on, imagine if an L2, every time someone wanted to bring value onto the L2, deflated, increased the price of that token perpetually. Simultaneously, it is getting harder and harder and harder to gain access to more units of that base token, right?
100%.
That's a setup that's rare. It really is. And I think that's actually what
100%.
makes TitanX so special, is that that proxy thing that it is. It's a proxy for so many things. It's a bridge. It's a gas token. it's so much. It's accessibility port.
Definitely.
So anyways, that was a little
no, you're good, man.
But yeah.
I
toss
didn't
it back.
want to,
I don't know.
I got nothing else. I shared my thought. I just want to let you found the feeling got to you, and so just you keep rolling.
Sometimes it's funny because that was actually something that I've been thinking of a little bit, but that was the first time that all kind of came together like that, which was cool to happen on stream. So
I think it's very well spoken. I got no comment to say. Like I completely agree. I agree with you, and I also have to internalize it myself. Like, all right, let me just sit back here for a second, because where how I've thought about TitanX and the ecosystem and how it's grown or expanded, I just have to digest that.
Totally.
To be honest.
I mean, I think I do too. Honestly, I got to sit back and think about it more. But there's something in there that's really cool and special, and that's why I think it's really cool that we're in this ecosystem.
I agree. I wanted to point this out because Utah Crypto mentioned this about Coinbase integrating decentralized exchanges into its platform, which is, when was this? When did they talk about this? I was trying to find a news article. 2 weeks ago. Okay. I know the video won't play, but soon you'll be able. Asset Universe, DEX trading, because we were talking about being able to do DeFi. How are these worlds combining, colliding? DEX trading is coming. Today, Coinbase users can trade hundreds of assets, but soon you'll be able to trade thousands of base assets within moments of them going live. Okay, there you go. Expanding the universe. So to the point of, because I was wondering within the TitanX eco, what was really the best like next launch of chain to go to, and it seems like for a handful of these tokens that have done a base launch, like, hey, great for them. Anyway, I know we got a jet here in a minute. I wanted to take a moment. Taurus third audit complete. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
What does that mean? What are you thinking? All right, so you get the audit back, you get a whole report. What happens next? Is it like, did the report just say, you've done wonderful, this is so amazing, launch tomorrow? Or was it, here's what to be aware of, this worries me, this looks great? I don't know what you can and cannot share for an audit. I don't know all that's
the third one's
entailed.
actually posted in the white paper. I got to get the other two sorted out, but if you go to docs.taurus.win.
Docs.taurus.win. Give me an audit.
Go to audits, and we got the if you scroll down, you can see the Taurus audit report.
Cool.
This was done by 33 Audits & Co.
I'm not familiar. Have they done any of the other TitanX ecosystem projects?
I don't believe they've done the TitanX ecosystem projects, but they are whitelisted by Uniswap.
Oh, nice.
So they're a pretty skookum company. They do a great job. So
nice.
If you scroll down, you'll see that there's a number of things they found, but nothing major. There was informational, there was low, and there was a couple mediums. And if you look actually at the mediums,
tell me where to go, because
right here's perfect.
Okay.
So see how there are 3 mediums there.
Yeah.
There are about 5 lows, and then there's a handful, or 4 lows, and there's a handful of informations.
Yep.
So what you're going to see is fixed means there was a change done to the code based on the what was found. Now,
so does that mean like while they're performing the audit, they said, hey, we noticed this, and then y'all went back, fixed it, and then showed them?
Yes. So that's how the audit works. The audit process is give them the code, give them the access to the repository. They go through each line of code. They find as much as they can, they then bring us the preliminary report, and the report gives us all the severities, all what's going on, all the different. And if you go through, this is a 16-page report or 15-page report. So if you go through, it'll show you every bit of code that they assessed that was changed.
Okay.
And so you can see everything. Now, the big thing I want people to understand here is because there's two results that you can see if you go up to the this here, you see the status, right? Status, there's two different things. There's acknowledged and fixed. Yep. Now, I want to explain why there's acknowledged and why there's fixed. So there's two different things. They all don't say fixed. So fixed is, as I was saying, you get the code back. It says to be changed. Okay, yep, that's an issue. We'll fix it. So the code is changed to mitigate and make sure that whatever that issue is, which medium is non-critical. You know, it's more just like this would affect the protocol, but it would not damage it necessarily. It would not be critical. So we got two mediums though, and an informational that we said were, or that are acknowledged. Now, what acknowledged means is we understand that they've pointed this out, but we've decided not to change it. Now, the reason for this is because it was by design. They picked up on something that they were saying was going to be an issue because it would force something to happen or make this one consequence only happen when that's by design. So one of them is the fixed fee level is used when swap tokens on Uniswap. Now that's because the pool fee is set to 2%. And the reason for, they were saying, oh, it's going to cause MEV, but that's the whole transaction is what's being looked at. So more or less, now I don't want to go too much into the weeds, but essentially,
we don't have to.
This was by design. So these acknowledged pieces were actually not changed because the issues they found or the potential things that they're finding were in a greater context actually supposed to happen so that a full chain of events could happen properly.
So acknowledge is more like from their perspective, if they were to implement this, like they felt like, all right, this is going to be a major problem because they're thinking differently about how to launch a project and building it and coding it out. But it's more. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it can even be more simple. Like and M does not mean major. Medium is not high or critical.
Yeah.
Which is
not.
Super low tier finding. But you can think about it like, this is my understanding. Again, I'm still learning, but my understanding is like,
you're good.
Imagine you bring a track car to the track and these auditors are going through and checking everything over. My understanding of it so far is like, they'll look at the tire pressure and be like, the tire pressure is below spec. And you're like, well, the conditions outside are hot. And so I want to let a little bit of the air out of the tire so that when everything heats up and the air expands, the tire pressure rises properly and the compound sticks to the road better. So all that, like in context with the greater action, right? It's these feel more, from what I've been understanding, very specific to like one aspect, but not necessarily looking to the greater context always.
Yep.
So this is the third audit. Feel free for anyone that's watching to go through. It's cool to understand how these work and see just what goes into an audit. But it's also important. And here's the thing too. You can get an audit. Personally, I would rather have an audit that comes back like this, where it's like low informational, maybe a medium or two.
Oh yeah.
But shows that there was things found, than something to come back and just be like, yep, nope, perfect, it's good, there's nothing at all. Like that to me is kind of like, the more I've learned about this process, that seems like it would have been a red flag.
Then a pumped up fund launch token.
Exactly. So this shows that the auditors found stuff. They really went through the code. They really did find things, but they're non-serious.
Sure.
Right. So you asked also, what does this mean? Well, this means now that the Taurus code is done, it's ready to launch, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to launch tomorrow. We still are coming to the conclusion of where exactly is the right sentiment, price for ETH,
Yep.
what actually matters most. And the biggest thing is I want people that are watching this to understand that this decision is not a its sole focus of the decision is not to get the protocol to launch at the best time for the protocol's sake. This launch and the timing of it is so important for the users as well, because if Taurus operates properly, if it gets the right amount of adoption, if it gets it has a successful launch, then that means that the user experience is going to be way, 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 way better than if that isn't the case. And
So
so
that
for me,
so before you jump, I want to ask a question, piggyback off that, because
yeah,
I think two sides to a coin. It's great so many projects has launched on within the TitanX eco. You could also there's also the argument of projects have launched that it just felt like it's a direct copycat, and so the value add can get diminished because it's like, oh, I've just seen this copy and paste, copy paste, copy paste, copy and paste. So, in your eyes, how do you get participation in Taurus when you can't when there can be there can be that sentiment of like, I feel burned out from copy and paste projects just put on a different like, oh, instead of putting on TitanX, I'm going to put it on, I don't know, another project. If you understand where I'm going.
I think I do. I mean, it's sounds so just to make sure I'm getting it right. Like, how do people differentiate Taurus from a copycat style token, which people are exhausted from, which has been built over and over and over
Yeah.
in the ecosystem?
And does
Taurus
that go
is
in, does that like, do you think about that in terms of like when you think about launching, you're like, okay, as I'm thinking about, all right, when's an appropriate launch, as doing all this data, it's kind of, I'm taking like two questions, 2 points, and like kind of merging them into one. Are those kind of some of the thoughts you have, like, all right, I'm going to launch this project, but I want it to be optimal. Yeah, I'm just going to let it sit.
well, I mean, I don't the part of the question that I actually ignore is the idea of copycat, because
Yep.
I know with the way they've designed this, it's not.
Yep.
I know it is truly something different. It is
100%.
a very unique protocol that has not been done before.
Yep.
So I don't think about that. Luckily,
Okay.
I don't have to worry so much about that. I do where that does come in, and because it's not like it's a non-issue, because where it does come in as an issue is sentiment wise, is people that don't understand, have not taken the time to understand, just can't quite figure it out yet,
Sure.
because obviously it's a complex thing, and the DApp in testnet can only show you so much.
Yep.
There is always going to be the sentiment, and I've seen it time and time again where people come to my Twitter and they literally say, copycat garbage, why are we building more? And I'm just like,
Yeah.
okay, no, fair enough. It's just kind of where we're at. Or people are thinking that this is same as we've seen over the past while, which people are just tired of, I think, at this point. So I
Something
am
different.
totally understanding that that's how it's going to be for the first bit, until people actually see it and people actually understand how it works and see in time, what it can do. Then that will change. So I think that part of it is just more of an acknowledgement and an
Sure.
understanding that it's going to be a battle to fight through that, but that's not necessarily going to dictate the launch timing.
Okay.
Um, I don't think it makes sense to, really, because that's going to be there until that. Like, to me, it feels like the only way. It feels like a fact. People are like, if you wanted, if people know something to be true, the only way for them to change their mind is to show them that there's an alternative, something that disproves that, right? A
Yeah.
real thing that disprove that. And you can't just tell them it's not true, right? You have to literally prove something
Yeah.
as it's different. This is not true. So that's just going to take real world implementation, which is Taurus launching, in my opinion, for that to actually happen.
Okay.
And then it's a battle. I'm not going to say too much on the launch, but
Oh
I'm
no,
looking at
you can't.
everything.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think what you and I looked into, and I also want to be respectful of your time because we're 3 minutes past the hour, but in fairness to you, I mean, retail's nowhere to exist at the moment. It's all people who are in it for the long haul, and we're just kind of sitting on our hands. So it's fair, but I appreciate you. I appreciate you answering.
My pleasure.
Anything else, just out of respect for your time, is there anything else you want to? I can bring up the Taurus. I can bring up the odd. Is there anything else you want to speak on, or at least mention before we hop?
I mean, at this point, one of the cool things I guess that I'll say here is kind of reminded me of the way of TitanX in a sense, where it had 3 audits and there was a lot of findings, because it was new code, it was new, a lot of new stuff. And so I'm kind of getting this flashback and I'm wondering and hopeful that, maybe this is kind of another moment where we get a TitanX like launch where there's a lot of people that get interested and a lot of fun to be had. That this time though is kind of like the giving tree, where it's not one protocol does not benefit only. It's like everything in the ecosystem, which has the potential to be a chain reaction.
Yeah.
So I'm just really excited, and
Yeah,
I
man.
appreciate you asking about it, and we get to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'll have it's a tough place because I don't have everything's done. It's just like marketing time. It's talk about it time. It's stream about it time.
Yeah.
But you don't want to overdo it as well because you don't have a launch date yet, and you don't. People get worn thin with how much you talk about the same thing over and over without an actual product being live. So
Yeah.
it's like understanding and mitigating that whole. It's tough. So there will be a time here where I'll turn on the jets as we get a little bit closer.
But
until then,
you're hanging out.
About it.
You're chilling.
We're hanging out. Exactly. Get educated. If you don't know, go hop in the Taurus Telegram. Go read the white paper. Go play with the DApp. And yeah, that's it, man.
Cool. Well, I appreciate your time. We're 5 minutes over. Thanks, 220 people. Thank you all for tuning in, and on this lovely Wednesday afternoon. Later, everyone.
Later, man. Later, everyone.